So, welcome, Scott Forman, the brains behind the muscle of Vote Forward, the incredible organization that we here in Blue Revolution have been working with for the last few months and will continue to work with. Scott, welcome to our 1 month to beat Trump volunteer extravaganza.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Scott, just if you could, talk a little bit about how you got involved in doing this, printing or putting together pre-printed letters and having people send them to Democrats and voters around the country. How'd you get involved in this, Scott?
Sure. Happy to give a little background on me and the organization. We're a few years old, and the whole thing kind of was born out of an experiment that I ran from my kitchen table in 2017. My background is in software and a little bit in behavioral science, and I have worked on projects that involve direct mail before, and had always kind of wondered whether we could use these kinds of tactics to motivate people to change their behavior when it comes to voting. And so, feeling like I needed an outlet for my own rage and anxiety about our politics, I decided to do this thing where I would test out that hypothesis by running a rigorous experiment to see if letters improve turnout. And so I actually, people sometimes ask, well, why are they partially hand printed and partially handwritten? And a big part of the reason is that um, I didn't have the fortitude to handwrite the entirety of 1,000 letters back in 2017. So it was partly an efficiency measure, but partly because it makes some of the key information more legible, and we wanted to put some guardrails around the messaging too. Um, so that was the earliest thing. And the key thing to note is that that was a randomized trial, which is the kind of the gold standard for finding out whether this kind of intervention works. And it did. In that experiment, and then in a number of subsequent tests, we've been able to show that this specific format increases turnout by anywhere from 1 to 3 percentage points we've seen in a bunch of different trials, which is really, really good for voter turnout stuff. I mean, sometimes we say that, people say, well, that doesn't sound like that much. But at that level of impact, it's competitive, as you know, I'm sure, with the kind of best known tactics for doing GOTV. And so on the basis of those results, we kind of decided, okay, build an organization around this, scale up the software, and try to recruit a lot of volunteers to send a lot of letters. And here we are, a few years later, and you guys are helping write a ton of them, which is fantastic. So yeah, that's the brief version of the origin story. But I'm happy to elaborate on any part
Sure. Yeah.
of
No.
this.
Well, Scott, it's great that you mentioned. For one thing, sometimes I get messages from people because we're trying to sign up a lot of people for these letters, and they say, "Do I need to write out an entire letter?" And it's like, no, no, no. That would take that would be way longer. So they are pre-printed.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. You are
You could show your example, actually. This might be a
Yeah,
good time to show
that's
it.
not a bad idea. This is a good time to do it. So, as I mentioned, I do just have a little example here of a letter that I did. So they are pre-printed. This one is already folded, and you can see the Vote Forward logo there at the top. And then I put a little message here to this voter. And I write, I'm a very simple person. I sort of get straight into the point, and I just wrote, voting is the best way to make your voice heard. I know that other people
I think that's great.
more elaborate messages, but for me that works, and it's kind of easy to get into the rote, of writing.
Yeah, I think that's great. It does. You don't. We often say we don't think that people need to write very much. I'm pretty sure that the reason it works at all is because the person sending it bothers to write it at all, and so the message definitely matters, and like having it be sort of a little bit personal and feel genuine is important. But that doesn't mean it has to be long. And so we feel like you can get a lot of mileage out of a pretty short
Although
statement.
I did see someone last night you did an event with the cast of Hamilton last night, which was
Yeah.
extremely impressive. And I know
Yeah.
that
Thanks.
Blue Rep did see that, although by the time you see this video, it will have been a few weeks ago. But someone mentioned that they had quoted Hamilton, or not quoted Hamilton, quoted Lincoln
Quoted Lincoln.
in
Yes.
their letter.
Yes.
to people, and I believe it was the best way to predict the future is to change it,
Shape it?
shape it, something like
Make
that.
it? I don't remember exactly, but
Something very Lincoln-esque.
it's a good quote. I like the idea of quoting Lincoln. I definitely I appreciated that
Right.
that example
So if you want to quote Lincoln in your letters, you can do that too, folks. But
for sure.
simple, clear. These messages are nonpartisan, and talk about why we are actually writing a nonpartisan message.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's kind of two reasons for that. One is that there's a fair amount of evidence in the academic literature that nonpartisan messages for get out the vote in particular are the most effective. And so if you were to make it super specific about candidates and make a lot of assumptions about the kinds of issues that the person you're writing to might care about, that almost it's pretty clear that that makes it less effective at getting them to do the thing that you really want them to do, which is to show up and vote at all. Um, it is worth noting, and I always make a point of emphasizing this because it's an important fact about Vote Forward. As a 501c4 nonprofit, our core mission is actually nonpartisan. So, like when you go look at our website, you'll see that there are two different kinds of campaigns. There are nonpartisan campaigns that serve what we think of as our core mission, which is to increase voter and civic participation among traditionally underrepresented communities in the electorate, so people of color, young people, etc. And so those are easily identifiable and they're kind of the majority of what we do. And then separately, with a fraction of our resources, we have some explicitly political campaigns that are focused on trying to turn out people who we believe are very likely to vote for Democrats if they are going to vote. So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Blue Revolution is focusing primarily on the latter. But even there, even when we're writing letters to Democrats who we're pretty sure are going to vote for Democrats, we think it's more effective to make the messaging all about what people in the industry might call, or often call, mobilization rather than persuasion. For these campaigns that are focused on Democrats, we don't really need to persuade them to vote for the Democratic candidate. We're pretty sure based on their voter registration and other factors that they're going to if they vote at all. So that's kind of the cluster of reasons why the content is all nonpartisan.
So potentially, I mean, there's an incredibly high number of people who are going to receive these letters we're pretty sure that they're going to vote Democrat, and it's going to, in the aggregate, it's going to make a big difference.
We hope so. It's hard to know. It's a very strange year, so we do all. I always like to caution like our nobody knows for sure what's going to happen in any of these things, and the louder the election, I think, the more different messages people are receiving, the harder it is to be sure about what effect any individual intervention has. But we have confidence from our prior experiments that this has some effect, and we also feel pretty good about the fact that the handwriting we think has a good chance of cutting through some of the noise. So, like if you're in one of these states and you're getting inundated with campaign mail, you're probably going to ignore most of it. But if you then have a letter that's interspersed into there that's like from a real person who took the time to write it to you, we think part of the reason that the thing works is that people are more apt to pay attention to that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, the way that I try to explain it to folks in the group, just from a pure kind of common sense standpoint, I suppose, without doing my own scientific experiments as you folks have done, is just, if you get something in the mail and it's handwritten and you are, 50% likely to vote or 60% likely to vote, maybe you're one of those Democrats that thinks, I'm a Democrat, but I hate all of them and I don't really want to vote this year and it's all a bunch of,
Right,
group.
right.
Maybe you get a handwritten letter from a real person and you kind of say, someone took a little bit of time to write this out, and
Totally.
it's personalized. Someone put effort into sending this to me. So you know what? I was 60% sure I was going to vote, and I'm kind of making up the numbers a little bit, but maybe I'm 70 or 80% likely. I'll make sure I vote when I get home. When I'm
Yeah. Sure. And it's a game of numbers too. It's like it's not going to work for everybody, but for the people it does work for, those are extra votes that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And it's that's a pretty powerful thing to be able to accomplish out there.
And if we send a lot, it will make a difference. And so, Scott, one of the things that we try to do here in Blue Revolution is sort of like be socially aware, be sort of aware of the people around us who are doing the same type of work that we're doing.
Hmm.
I think if I'm sort of sitting at home in my own dark room writing these letters out, I'm sort of like, well, I'm doing my teeny tiny drop in the bucket. But when I see other people doing it, I know that I'm part of a bigger cause. And there's always that kind of strange leap, almost mental leap you need to take from your own work that you're doing, your own activism that you're doing, to the activism of the group, to everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. We don't really emphasize this that much in our various channels, but I think a really important part of this is how it feels as a volunteer to write one of these things. I mean, as I mentioned, that was what I was looking for at the beginning is something that felt productive and in a concrete way, and even in a there's something satisfying about the like manual aspect of it. The like there's something a little bit meditative about doing it, and I think that that can be a good thing. And then I do think there's it's nice knowing that there are thousands and thousands of people out there who are doing this activity and all the other activities that are going to help rescue our democracy. So people I do like to sort of emphasize like this is one of the things, it's not the only thing. We after we send all of our letters, we're going to be encouraging people to phone bank in the last couple of weeks before the election. We love to see people signing up to be poll workers, like everything, whatever you're doing this year, you as long as it's something in addition to voting yourself, which is the first thing that you should do, um, we we admire it and applaud it. So taking action at all is what we're really looking for out there, and trying to provide one of the easy and effective ways to do that.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that. One of the things I've noticed from all the different progressive organizations that we've been speaking to and working with is that there's not a lot of competition going on here. There's not a lot of turf.
Yeah,
Uh, Everyone's got the same goal and everyone's supporting each other, and it's great.
yeah. It's sort of a let a thousand flowers bloom. Is that the expression? I can't remember. Something like that. Um,
Another Lincoln quote, maybe.
maybe. Yeah. I think after the 28 midterms, it was really inspiring to see just how many different groups and different ideas people were experimenting with, and a lot of them have proven to be you know remarkably effective. We have a close affiliation with Swing Left, which is an amazing organization, and Indivisible is one of our partners. We love them, and there's a bunch of other orgs that have been hugely supportive. Daily Kos is another.
Absolutely. And these are, I mean, these are mostly organizations that just sprung up right after Trump won. And
Yeah, 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 that's right. Kos is older,
yes,
but but yeah, there's a lot of groups that formed in the aftermath, and it's a dark time, for American democracy. But one of the bright spots is seeing people, build some really cool stuff.
dark times bring people together, man.
Yeah,
It's how it works.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Brass tacks, Scott, if you could speak to a little bit, and by the way, for anyone listening and watching this right now, we're glad that you're watching, and go ahead and sign up. We've got the links to sign up for Vote Forward. Again, these are fun. They feel good to write. As Scott said, I think it's just the feeling of it, in the world of technology and constantly screens and this and that. It's good just to get a piece of paper and write something on it and send it to a real human being. So go ahead and sign up in the links if you haven't already. We've got thousands of people in Blue Red who have already signed up for this, and we're going to get thousands of more in the final month here as we fight to the finish line. And again, just to sort of go through it, you are getting a letter like this. You're getting the file for it. You're printing it out. You're writing your own message here. You're signing your name. I just put Dan M, and I like to add a fellow voter.
Mm.
Although I kind of forgot the A on that one, so
That's funny.
a fellow
Um,
voter.
that's
And,
good. That's good.
and then
My dad, when he writes his, signs them a fellow. I think Steve, a fellow Texan, something like that, because he's writing to voters in Texas. Um,
we're in Massachusetts, so I'm not sending these to any other Massachusetts people.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. So that's fine.
but and then at the bottom where my fingers are, I'm covering up the address, but you'll see the address that you're sending it to, right where my finger is here, and the return address as well. You're not using your own return address.
Yeah.
First name, last initial, and that way you can send it out and not have to put your address on it. So.
Yep.
Um,
That's right.
So, Scott, brass tacks, are we, how many of these are you planning on sending out?
So our goal for the year is 10 million. And it took us, I think, the first 9 months, 8 months of the year to get to 4 million. The pace has picked up substantially since then. So if you go to the website, you will see there's a ticker that's sort of counting up to 10 million. I was very skeptical that we were actually going to accomplish that. And I have various more politically experienced friends who assured me that what happens is that there's a huge outpouring of energy, like in the last 6 weeks. And we are seeing that, and it's really great. And so I'm starting to think that we might actually achieve it. If we do, we also have a plan to expand our map and kind of like, make the program even bigger. So that's not necessarily the end of the road, end of the story. Stay tuned. We're not gonna run out.
Yeah, we hope not. Well, we've got 80,000 people in here, and if everyone in this group picked up a stack, I think that it would make it a lot easier to get to that. Imagine, folks, 10 million voters out there that we could reach before election day. It really would be something special, and it
Yep.
really would put a dent. The tagline of Blue Revolution that I wrote. The week that we started the group was we put a dent in Trump on November 3rd, and that was 4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean,
4 long years ago.
a lot of us who are deeply engaged in politics have been waiting for this moment, like
Yep.
knowing that America needed to like change, was going to need to make a really big course correction, and we've known that for years now, and we've been kind of waiting for this moment for years, and so I think it's the right moment to leave nothing on the table,
Yes.
right?
Nothing on the
So
field, nothing on the table, all that
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
choose your metaphor.
Yes, exactly. Lots of metaphors that we could use. No, it's been building and building, and the day after Trump won, I mean, I'm sure that you felt the same way as someone who started your own organization. But it's just people starting organizations, running for office, volunteering. People who'd never volunteered in their lives before. I mean, I see it every single day in Blue Rev. For the midterms, for the special elections back in 2017, and now, obviously for this presidential race, it's people who have just never picked up a pen and done something like this before,
Yeah.
or done any kind of political work, and it's like this is
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the running for office. That's another thing, just as an aside, like that I found really inspiring is how many people have been moved to do that, especially young people and women, people of color,
yeah,
to just take power. Like
yeah,
it's ours, it
yeah.
belongs to us. So it's really inspiring to see that.
It's that old line from Obama that people kind of used to make fun of him for it, but it's we are the change that we seek, and it's just that's democracy.
Yep.
Don't leave the governing up to someone else. You are the governor.
Yep.
The,
Yeah.
you're the
Yeah.
state's assembly person or whatever you are,
That's actually one of the reasons why, when I think like more deeply about why it's so important to me to try to increase voter turnout, big part of the reason has to do with the fact that I think the whole system works better when all of our elected officials kind of like know in their guts that like whatever random person they run into on the street is a person who may or may not vote for them. And if you know that like 60% of the people out there in your district aren't going to vote at all, don't care, you're just not going to be thinking about their interests very much. who the people that you will look out for are the people who, and maybe this sounds sort of cynical, but this is just the way that democracies work. Like they feel responsible to the people who um, get to decide whether they stay or not. And we all get to decide that. Bracket some of the most egregious examples of attempts to sort of curtail that right, which is part of what we have to fight for. Um, but yeah, if we can just we can choose to exercise that right and just make it a healthier society as a result. And so, you know, that's a kind of more abstract way of looking at it, but that's part of what inspires me to do this
It's
kind of
very
work.
real, and you're making me feel even better about my message as you talk. It's voting is the best way to make your voice heard. So I think
Yeah,
that it's true, right? I mean,
absolutely.
if yeah,
That's how it's that linkage. It's like your vote is the conduit between your interests and the people who exercise state power in our society.
exactly, exactly. And there's always there's kind of two levels, right? There's voting, and that's something that obviously everyone should do to make their to be represented and to be governed democratically. And then there's also just activism, like we're doing right here.
Yep.
And I think that there's a chasm, there's a kind of imposter syndrome for maybe both of those things with a lot of people. Voting, politics is something that other people do, right? And
Yeah.
we're
Or
trying
maybe
to get.
I've heard this one. I don't know enough about the issues or the candidates to render to like have a to feel like I can confidently express an opinion.
Okay.
And I think part of the answer to that is um, like I would always want to ask like, well, do you have even a an inkling of which candidate you prefer? Like, have you heard something that makes you have a even just the tickle of an idea that you might prefer one to the other?
Right.
That's enough.
Yeah,
You don't have to read all of Ballotpedia before deciding who to vote for. Um,
exactly.
I
Right.
mean, it's good to familiarize yourself broadly with the issues that they where they stand on the issues, but it's the most important thing is to just cast your ballot at all for the reason that we just talked about, which is that by doing so you make them feel like you um, you matter, and like they have to take your position into account in the future.
For sure. Yeah, and I mean, I mean, as someone who taught political science for many years, I didn't know everything that my representative voted on that year.
No,
No.
nobody does. That's why it's a representative democracy and not a direct democracy. Like we don't
Exactly.
I don't need to know all the details of like the uh the 5% pension shortfall in the you know
Right.
whichever what have you. I can't even think of a good example, but there are a million things that we're hiring these people to to be good stewards of for us. Um, but we have to vote
Yeah.
in order to have any say in who they're going to be.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I always say that we have to vote not only for kind of progressivism itself, which is obviously we're all sort of progressive-minded people, but just for the republic itself, to keep the institutions intact. I mean, they're
Yeah,
under extreme danger right now, like we've never
yeah,
seen.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's really bad.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really important. Like this is a moment at which what we're part of what we're defending is the democracy itself, and like trying to make it healthier, and so um, and to repair some of those wounds. And I think a massive voter turnout is one of the ways to get there.
No question, Scott. And you are everything that you've built here is part of that link, right, between people who are active, like us, people who are passionate about this thing, and maybe some folks who just need a little bit of a push, right? Need a little bit of a reminder, and I think that you're doing some incredible work here. I think that, it's been so inspiring. Like I said, the darkness brings out the light in people, and I think that The last 4 years have just been obviously, traumatic, scary, anxiety ridden, everything happening in the news right now with the courts obviously are on the line in a way that they weren't just like a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
We have got a lot to fight for. We've got a lot to lose here.
Yeah.
And, I just, again, for anyone watching, brass tacks, I mean, go to these links and sign up to do this work because we really need all hands on deck for the final month here. It's just like we get one shot at this, and time is going to run out. And don't kick yourself on November 3rd saying, "Gosh, I should have listened to Scott and Dan back in a month ago to sign up for this thing." I mean, do it now, and you will thank yourself on election night. And as these results come in, you can write one of these letters that Scott has come up with here, and you can write it to a real voter in a state like Pennsylvania or Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, North Carolina, these states that we need to win. And you can see the kind of slow ticker coming in and say, the votes coming in Arizona, North Carolina, whatever. And you're like, I got some of those voters out. You can turn to whoever you're watching it with and brag about it if you want. Right?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
On behalf of Blue Revolution, we're just so happy. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so, other than just to say thank you to you all. I mean, you've been on board with this for a long time, and you've done a lot of fantastic work already. So I am really grateful for that, and for everybody out there who's actually powering this thing. Yeah, just want to say thanks, and good luck out there.
Yeah, great. And Scott, let's give a big round of applause to the people in Blue Revolution here.
Absolutely, yes. Thanks, guys.
Fantastic.
Deep appreciation to all of you, and thanks a lot.
Indeed. Thanks, Scott.